Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. You can follow us at Rockies Now on all of your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads. I'm your host, Steven, co-host Tom with me for the right. Tom, good to see you. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing? It's good to be on our first live stream here. It's awesome. I got the Rockies jersey. I actually
Hmm.
see the shirt going right now. Just stand up so you can see it. Got the Colorado Rockies shirt
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
So it's good to be live. And actually now it's I guess for some of our listeners and viewers, it's good to kind of put some names to faces here.
Yeah, I like it better rather than just like avatars on our screen. So I like that for those who are watching. I'm wearing my Rockies 2017 sweatshirt. My favorite. I need to get more Rockies gear for Christmas. So, anyways, we have Rockies baseball to talk about. A lot of stuff happened over this week. Well, kinda. At least for the Rockies, a little bit more active than a lot of teams were over the winter meetings. But so let's get to the Rockies news, shall we? Before we get to all the craziness that happened at the winter meetings, craziness. So the Rockies, going into this offseason, we've already known that they're looking for pitching, right? And that's one of the things that they're, going to be looking at this offseason before we head into spring training, which is hard to believe just 2 months away now from players reporting in Scottsdale. Um, Bill Schmidt, he, went on MLB Network, kind of talked about what's going on. And, he was very honest, which is great to see. And that's one thing I love about Bill Schmidt. He's pretty honest, for most of the time, at least, about where, like, the assessment where the Rockies are at right now at the moment. And, he was honest how, like, they're kind of, Arizona is still ahead of them quite a bit because obviously Arizona went to the World Series this past year. And, they're looking for pitching, but also, too, it's just that he kind of gave hints that, the Rockies are going to look for a backup catcher. We don't know if it's going to be Austin Wins or it's going to be somebody else, or either they bring back up Brian Servin. I would like to say that they might try to bring back Austin Wins just because of what he did this past year with a lot of the arms that the Rockies brought in. Or they could go out in free agency. And I know on our social pages that we posted just, I think yesterday, I think last night, I posted on Twitter and Instagram, like about Austin Hedges. Would he be an option for the Rockies? And and Hunter Goodman, he can play catcher as well. And I think the Rockies would like to see him in that lineup a little bit more next year. Um, it just, it just was great to see, Bill Schmidt be a little bit more honest because I remember when Jeff Reich was the GM. I just remember it just like we didn't really know, right? Like he would kind of give hints here and there, but it just like what are we doing here? Like, are we going to get pitching, hitting, what, So, it's kind of nice to see that we kind of have a plan to set. The Rockies are going to be playing the young kids next year. And but they want to have some veterans in there, obviously with Chris Bryant at first base. He'll be the first base at first base moving forward for next year. And then Charlie Blackmon will be in right field for the Rockies or DH, along with Hunter Goodman kind of sharing spots there. Um, Tom, like what, like I don't know. It was great to see, but also it's just like I don't know. It just the Rockies are kind of in an interesting position here because again, like the Rockies have never lost 100 games in the franchise history, and so they're kind of like in a spot where they kind of have to just wait and see, like basically wait and see what they got.
This is hopefully what I like to call a transition year. It kind of this season, upcoming season, kind of has a feeling. Again, I'm gonna use a White Sox reference because White Sox fan. When the White Sox lost 100 games in 2018, that was a big rebuilding year. And then in 2019, that's when things started to come together. Their young core was starting to take big steps forward, show some promise. Guys like Lucas Giolito, Yohan Moncada, they took big strides forward there. Even Eloy Jimenez in his rookie season. And then that's the following off seasons when they really added veterans like Yasmani Grandal. They added Dallas Keuchel, Edwin Encarnacion for 1 year. So just just a couple examples. I got the feeling this season could be like that White Sox 2019. It's going to be another year of, I guess you could say, development or kind of hopefully when I say this, a transition year from
Mhm.
rebuild to possibly moving in the push transition to contender into a contender team. So it's going to be kind of another year of growth and evaluations, and hopefully, like I said, strides forward for the young core players And just another big thing, obviously, with I've posted this on Twitter and X, it's the right move to move Chris Bryant to first base full time.
Yeah.
So again, hopefully players, veterans like himself, Charlie Blackmon, Elias Diaz can stay on the field to provide veteran leadership both in the clubhouse and on the field. And of course, even guys such as Tovar, Doyle, Jones build off their rookie campaigns, and younger guys who are not young players really anymore. They're kind of transitioned to veterans, guys such as Ryan McMahon. You can throw, who am I thinking of? You can even throw Kyle Freeland. You can throw Austin Gomber into that mix there. Hopefully they continue to make positive steps forward. And again, like I said, so if possible, again, the Rockies, Bill Schmidt, like you said, was very honest. They're not going to be looking to add a lot of position players, not a lot of power bats, as he called it. I think that's the word the
Yeah.
phrase he used. But mostly they're going to try to add arms to increase the depth of the pitching staff to give Bud Black options. And then hopefully at the end of 2024, they can transition into adding pieces, not necessarily elite, but solid veteran pieces that can round out a contending team into 2025. Hopefully my prediction comes true. That's when they make that big jump into contender mode.
Yeah, and when Bud Black was and Bill Schmidt were mentioning about the building up the bench, it kind of just tells me that the Rockies might very well make a couple trades, and one of them is like I mentioned on our story the other day on Instagram. By the way, if you don't follow us on Instagram, make sure to do so at Rockies Now. Um, I think Montero and Toglia are definitely the top two pieces for me, at least, to get traded. Now we could just see
Mhm.
one, but if the Rockies are not going to play him, you got to trade him. But there's a potential that Montero might be a backup for Bryant at first base, but same thing with Hunter Goodman, he could be backup. And the Rockies have a lot of platoon players where they can play everywhere, or at least in the outfield, infield, you name it. And the thing is that there's going to be guys going to be coming up later in the season. Of course, we're going to wait and see if Amador comes up. I don't think he will be up by this year. I think
No.
the only guy I feel like that's kind of close is Drew Romo, but I don't think he's going to be even up by the end of this
No.
year. And so basically, I think they could maybe keep some of the players that they have now and just wait it out and see. But I think if I'm the Rockies, make at least one or two trades to get pitching, and then you can kind of solidify that bench. And the sad part is because I really enjoyed Montero the second half of this year. He really started, like, his on base percentage was great. His swing and a miss rate was down rather than the first half in last year. I remember he struck out quite a lot last year.
Right.
Um, and he came up in a few clutch moments. Not to mention, I think he had like 10 home runs this year. He has power, and we're just waiting to see that. It's just that the Rockies never really gave him that playing time because there's guys already there. And so, to make things better and easier for the roster and just for it to be, well, a little bit better constructed, I think they ought to trade Montero and Toglia
Mhm.
to free up some room, get more pitching. And if they go out and get a backup catcher, they can trade him at the deadline. If Romo's ready by any chance, if he's ready after or right around the trade deadline, they can bring him up and be the backup behind Elias Diaz. If Elias Diaz is moved, I feel like that would be kind of a big stretch to have Romo already start. I don't think that they would do that. Um, I could see Diaz, of course, this is a discussion for another time, but we could see Diaz getting moved at the trade deadline. But at the same time, though, that depends if Romo is going to be ready, and I don't think he will. Not to say I don't, he very well could get on fire. I mean, AAA is a great place to hit, especially in the Pacific Coast League, but it just you don't want to rush the guy. I feel like 2025 is more of his year. A lot like guys like Amador and Fernandez. You don't want to rush those guys too early because if you do, that could hurt their development quite a bit. And I don't think the Rockies are going to be willing to do that. So I think, and we talked about this before too. I think we're looking at a lot, roster wise, a pretty similar year to what we saw last year. It's just that we're kind of getting some guys basically on these small deals until the bright young guns come up for the Rockies to make their debut in 2025.
No, yeah, this is not gonna. I agree with you. Drew Romo is going to spend the entire year in AAA with the Albuquerque Isotopes. Maybe he could be a September call up given the situation, or maybe the trade deadline. I mean, sorry, after the trade deadline, if they do trade Elias Diaz or whatever, anybody other piece or a spot opens up, maybe. But I just would like to see him get a full year seasoning down in AAA. And I do agree. Players like Austin Hedges, Mitch. I'm looking at the list now. Free agent catchers. Mitch Garver is another option. Who else is here on here? There was one more name I was looking at. Hedges.
Tony Walters is apparently a free agent, so the Rockies
Yeah,
could bring him back.
he's at the bottom of the list here. So yeah, Hedges. So yeah, and looking at just the top tier list, because another one I was thinking was Victor Caratini, but he's going to the Astros now, a 2 year deal. So and Martin Maldonado, sure, but he's 37 years old, and I don't know what shape those knees are at this point in his career. So guys like Garver and Hedges would be guys I would definitely be willing to sign to complement Diaz, because like you said, they're not offensive. They're not known for their offensive production. They're more known for, well, Garver was at one point, but they're more known for we would bring them in for veteran leadership and mentoring, and as opposed to also being defensive catchers. And then it is tough to trade catchers at the deadline, because when you join a new team, you have to learn the pitching staff real fast, tendencies, sequences, those kinds of things. But if some of the contenders do need one, I mean, the Yankees just traded away Kyle Higashioka. If they lose Jose Trevino to injury, there's a possibility there for you to trade a catcher too. And the list goes on. But I do agree with you. It's going to be tricky, but I would think that hopefully they bring in one of these veterans to complement Diaz and give Ramos some more time. Because again, great year in Double A last year, but I don't think he's ready for the majors just yet. Maybe a cup of coffee. Maybe as you always say, a cup of coffee in September is a possibility.
My favorite word. I love it. Or favorite sentence, I should say.
I love it.
Yeah. The Rockies, they also, okay, so we had the draft lottery, which I'm super excited. I always get excited about the draft lottery. I like it. I know some people kind of are on the borderline of it. I like it. It kind of keeps teams more competitive, more in it, I guess. We saw a lot of teams move down this year, like a lot. And I was not gonna lie, I was worried, because when we were going through the draft lottery, I was watching it and I'm like, oh great, here we go. The Rockies are probably gonna get like 10th, 11th, 12th. Tom and I, we were talking before we got on here. We just feel bad for A's fans, because they got gut punched again. They got moved down quite a number of spots. Same thing with the Royals. They got moved down. And the nice thing is the Rockies, they stayed at number 3. They kind of stayed conservative, which is nice. They didn't get the number 1, which is kind of disappointing, because those 2 spots went to the Guardians and the Reds, finishing 1 and 2. Happy for Guardians fans. They're going to be able to get a bright young prospect, depending on what their draft class is, because that's another thing that we're going to have to talk about once we get closer to the draft day. And hopefully we'll be able to maybe go live when the draft picks are doing. That's something that we can possibly do. But yeah, number 3 is pretty good for the Rockies. I mean, I'm not upset about it. I know some Rockies fans were upset about it, that we lost. There's no, this is the best position the Rockies have had in years. I mean, the last time the Rockies had the 3rd overall pick was back in 2015 when they drafted Brendan Rodgers. That's pretty huge. And the Rockies have done that only 2 times. First time, obviously, was, for those who remember, was 2013, John Gray, number 3 pick. And number 2 went to the Cubs, and that was Chris Bryant. And so the Rockies, I mean, the history here means that potentially there's a good chance the Rockies are going to get a pretty good solid player at number 3. Again, we're going to have to wait and see what the draft class will be this year. But a lot of people are saying it's going to be, decent, pretty good college guys. A lot of them are college guys, which that's what Bill Schmidt is doing, especially the last couple of drafts. So that's a perfect opportunity for the Rockies to jump on board. And I think there's already some names, at least for me, that I've already looked at and say, hey, I think that would be a great guy. One of them is Chase Burns, who I think he just transferred over to Wake Forest. He pitched at Tennessee, and he was actually teammates with Chase Dollander. So it would be kind of cool to see him and Chase Dollander kind of be the number 1 and 2 guy at Coors Field in the future. So that's one of the guys I'm looking at right now. And then the guy that was I think MLB Pipeline did a mock draft today, and I think it's like Benzana or something like that. He's from Oregon State or North Oregon, or I think it's Oregon State. He's an infielder, second baseman. I could see that happen. I'd be totally fine with that. Again, you want to get the top player available, period. But if you can get a pitcher like Chase Burns, if he's available, I wouldn't be surprised the Rockies go get pitching again because again, the Rockies are really after getting pitching, especially over the last couple of years and the injuries that they've had with Marquez and Satella, and especially with some of the depth that they had with Rolison getting injured, and now Helcris Olivares, who was a top pitching prospect for them, now going to Boston, and so I wouldn't be surprised if they go get pitching again in the draft.
No, I agree. Looking at the article of MLB.com, you got Jim Callis and Jonathan Mayo, the two draft analysts for them. They have that Oregon State second baseman Travis. I hope. Sorry if I butchered his name.
I think.
Bazana.
Yeah.
Or however you say it. So, and looking at, I don't know too much about him, but looking at what he's known for, he's a nightmare on the bases. He's got power. He's got speed, and as they say, quote with an exclamation mark, he can really hit. So that's somebody definitely I'd be open to. I do like athleticism, and I'm always looking for contact. I will preferably, if given the state of some of the Rockies hitters, I would like contact before power or contact with some power.
Yeah.
But either way, it's still, I think I have to read more about him, but it's still a pretty good pick. Back to the draft lottery, it's kind of interesting looking at how this year turned out in comparison to last year. Like as we got into the top 10, like I said, I was crossing my fingers the whole time saying, come on, get into the, I was hoping at least the Rockies get into the top 5. At least that's like the bar I was hoping for. And sure enough, the White Sox take 5, which I called. Like anyone wants to check out my Twitter X feed, I called that one. But yeah, I think it's a good spot. And I do agree with you. I think it's going to be a college player ultimately. Bill Schmidt, I'm not sure if he has, I don't want to say he's against high school players. I think he just has a preference looking at I'm not sure if maybe I'm looking at using the right word in terms of labeling it. He looking for, I guess, some sense of maturity or more experience on a bigger stage from high school to college. So maybe that's what he's looking for. But as far as it goes, when I look at the draft class last year, it is interesting. The Pirates and the Nationals had the top 2 picks last year, and now they slid back to 9 and 10. So my opinion on the draft ladder, I like it because it gives, because then like we were talking about earlier, the team with the worst record doesn't consistently have the number 1 pick year after year after year. So like the Oakland A's don't get 4 or 5 years of the consecutive number 1 overall pick, because that would just be wrong. Because if a team isn't necessarily trying to progress, I don't think they should have first crack at the whole group of players that are eligible for the draft. But either way, it was nice to kind of see the Mets looking at I think this is the most interesting side. The Mets had a 0.463% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, and they ended up with the 19th overall pick. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with their payroll and resetting the luxury tax.
I think it was the tax. It was a tax because I think they moved down with several places, especially if you don't make the playoffs.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And
same thing. I think the same thing happened with the Padres and the Yankees because they overspent on the luxury tax and they moved down all the way to, like, the Padres, for instance. Like, they were in the top, I think, 10. They moved all the way to, like, basically near the bottom. It's like, see ya.
25. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Yankees, obviously, they, we're going to talk about this at the end, but like the Yankees, they got like basically right under them. So the Yankees are going to have to try to find some pretty darn good prospects this year because they just gave up a lot of good prospects to San Diego,
especially Michael King. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. But like, it's like, I like the draft lottery, but also too, I'll also mention this, like when Oakland and Kansas City got off the board, I'm like, hey, we have a shot here. Like, we have a shot of getting the first overall pick. And then when we got, 3rd, I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And I'm like, who got 1st and 2nd? Like, I'm like, did I miss any teams? And then they named the Reds and the Guardians, and I was like, okay, like, it kind of sucks because I mean, those two teams basically were 500 teams this year, and the Rockies were arguably like the worst team. They were the worst team in the National League, and here we're getting, we're 2 spots under them. So it's just like, it didn't really work out very well for the Rockies, but still, it's still a very good pick for them. I mean, it's not like, oh, this is no, it's the Rockies are going to get a good solid player, and with the Rockies scouting team and what they've done in the past number of years in the drafts, I think they're going to, hopefully, knock on wood, they're going to knock this out of the park, especially with some of the draft classes that we've had over the last few years. And so, yeah, I mean, it is another great position for the Rockies. I'm excited for the draft. And if the Rockies can get pitching, that'd be great. I mean, that's what the Rockies have done for the past few years. And but yeah, so far I like the draft lottery. I think it's going to be a lot of good for baseball. But I will see. I mean, this is just year two. I mean, we'll have to wait a few more years, and then again, if there's another, I think in the next few years we're gonna have another CBA, year, which hopefully we
Yeah.
don't have another thing that happened like a couple
Yeah.
years ago. But it's
Mhm.
just like we'll see. But so far, I like the draft athletics, and even the Reds a couple years ago they were kind of tanking a little bit on purpose. It just kind of in the Reds now they got a top two pick, and so it's just like I'm happy for Reds fans because they got a very good young team coming up, and you're talking about a team that might make the playoffs next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. They've been active
Mhm.
this offseason, which we're going to get to in just a second here. So um, I like it. I think it's good for baseball. But kind of sad that we didn't get the number one, but still, we're going to get a pretty solid top three. We'll take it,
Yeah.
100%. Um,
Yeah, just because you get the number one overall pick doesn't mean you're going to get the play. You'll pick the player with the best career.
yeah, yeah, for
That
sure.
has the best career. Excuse me.
Yeah, and then the day after, moving into our Rule 5 draft segment, little segment here, the Rockies released Connor Siebold, which is kind of surprising because I didn't see that coming for me. I wasn't too sure if the Rockies were going to be active in that, and they were, and which kind of said, "Hey, we're interested in somebody." And so I was like, "Ooh, I wonder what we're interested in." And like I think our good friends at Blake Street Banner, they kind of gave up. They kind of put up a list of pitchers that might be possibilities. The Rockies didn't do that. They kind of went out a little bit, like did some further searching, and they got right-handed pitcher Anthony Molina from the Tampa Bay Rays, who was, if you look at his numbers, they're not like, oh my goodness, this is going to be, but they're pretty good. I mean, he has solid ground ball rate. I think the solid ground ball rate of 41%, strikeout per nine of a little over 7 per 9 strikeouts, which is a pretty good clip. It's nothing to like be crazy about. But there was kind, and I want to talk about this because
Mhm.
I put this on Twitter, and people because the Rocky Scout guy, I forget his name, but he basically not Sterling Monfort, but the other guy, he basically said the guy we got, we feel like he might be a potential Herman Marquez type of pitcher, and actually the person that actually said that was director of scouting Sterling Monfort, who is the son of Dick Monfort. And all of a sudden it's like Twitter exploded, Rocky's Twitter exploded, and it's like, oh, this is a terrible pick. And like I saw some comments saying, oh, this is terrible for the Rock. And I'm like, the dude's barely 22. Give him a shot. And not only that, it's just like, just because he's the son of the Rockies owner doesn't mean you have to say that he's exactly like his father. Like you got to give the guy a chance, but also too, it's just like Marquette, and it's true. Like I think Sterling Monfort actually said that when they got Herman from the Rays, Herman wasn't really a huge strikeout guy. He was more of a ground ball pitcher, limited home runs. Where Molina, he has a little bit of home run rate, like he gives up the home run ball a little bit, but I like the Molina pick. I'm not putting like names out there saying, oh, he's going to be like Herman Marquez, but it's fun to imagine a little bit because I mean, the Rockies really haven't really gotten a young pitcher from the Rays since Herman Marquez, and I feel like the Rockies, in some ways, it's fine. It's nice to kind of imagine like, hey, this guy could be the next Herman Marquez. But I think some people got it wrong and said, oh, the Rockies are saying he's exactly like Herman Marquez. I think like Sterling Monfort and some of the scouts were like, hey, we see some similarities here. Like they're not the same, but we see some similarities here. If we can develop like this guy, kind of like what we've done with our past pitchers with Freelance and Natel Marquez, this guy could be a pretty solid pitcher for us. And I just kind of get ticked off when people just automatically say, oh, this is a terrible selection by the Rockies. How dare they? This is terrible. It's just like, calm down, people. He's still 21 years old. I think he's about to turn 22. But
Mhm.
one of the great things is that he's a lot of people say he's big league ready. We might see him in the rotation this year, so that's kind of cool to see. But I don't know, it just kind of ticked me off a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, when the thing is when you have when most fans they look at two statistics, they'll mostly look at ERA, they'll sometimes look at wins, but mostly they'll look at whip percentage too. And when they see an ERA over four, saying, "Oh, he's terrible." Anything I always say anything four or over, that's when fans say, "Ah, he's terrible."
Hmm.
But I don't see it that way. One thing that really stood out to me this past year in 2023 is between two levels, double A and triple A. Here it is. He threw 122 innings and he only missed and he made 27 starts. So he appeared in an extra game, but he was pretty reliable. Again, for viewers, the minor league season is shorter than major league season. That's why it doesn't get to 32 or 33 starts as opposed to lower than 30. So that tells me he took the ball every fifth day. He was reliable. He's on the field. And if you go a little further back to his days with the Rays in the low A levels, he pitched just fine. He was able
Hmm.
he in what was it 2022 between two levels he won a total of 14 games. He only lost two, so that's pretty good. He had a 3.86 ERA in 2022 overall. So I mean, and again, it's like you said, age can often be the biggest um, obstacle when it comes to maturity and in terms of a professional athlete, because not everybody is Bryce Harper at age 19 and makes his debut and just starts kind of setting the world on fire. You have to give some guys a chance, because just like how every person learns at a different rate. Um, you could say professional athletes develop differently at different rates as well. So that's
Hmm.
another thing you got to consider. And again, like you said, he's only 21 years old. He's got a good arm. I'm trying to check it out here. Looking at his pitch mix, he is fastball slider changeup guy. They're not horrible. He's got a pretty high rated fastball. He's got a good changeup. The slider here needs quite a bit of work. That's his lowest rated pitch. So again, if I think given some time, give him a chance. And again, if and he will be on the 40-man roster, so if he does progress well in AAA Albuquerque, again, hitter's ballpark, then that would earn him obviously a promotion to the big leagues. And again, it's a big wait and see. And people got to remember, in the Rule 5 draft, you're not going to find a top tier player. Remember, these are guys, I don't want to say are cast offs. These are players that had potential or still have potential at some, depending what organization you pay attention to. And they're just, again, I don't want to be mean and say cast off. They're just teams feel they can afford to let him go to another team to develop. They can lose this player. And
Hmm.
again, you can hit a lottery ticket with some of these guys. There are I'm not saying you can find one that develops into an elite player, but you can find some ones that can be solid pieces for your team. So I agree with you. I do like the pick. It has potential. And again, given the right, how do I say this? Given the right how do I say it? I'm trying to the right on if he's put on the right trajectory, he could be, I think. I don't know if he's a starter just yet looking at his numbers, but in terms of the major leagues, but I could see him being at least a reliever for sure, given the fact that he's got at least two well-rated pitches. Because if he wants
Hmm.
to be a starter, he's got to develop that third pitch.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think you touched on like the sinker looks pretty good.
Hmm.
Very solid sinker. I mean, like very good numbers, a very good scouting on those that sinker. I meant like again, like we'll see what happens. I mean, I would imagine he's probably going to start the year in AAA because I feel like like we've talked about this before. Like the lineup is basically ready, except maybe like a couple pieces in the bench. But basically, the lineup is ready. The bullpen, I think, is overall ready. I could see the Rockies getting one or two. I think from what we've heard from Bill Schmidt, he talked about getting relief pitching like one or two guys, kind of like what we did last year with Pierce Johnson and Brad Hand. And one thing I want to mention, I kind of forgot too, like when they were talking to Bill Schmidt on MLB Network about, hey, what about starting pitching? And Bill Schmidt brought up the idea. Listen, we're basically at the bottom of the barrel. Nobody really wants to come here to pitch. And I'm happy he was honest. Like he's not like, oh yeah, we're gonna because if for those who are watching or listening, you can check it out. It's on the Rockies website or MLB.com. You can just find it and type in Rockies or Bill Schmidt. But like Dan O'Dowd, who was right there, who was very close friends with him, they were kind of talking about what happened in the early 2000s. And for instance, so they didn't give names, but they said we tried it, hasn't worked, probably will never work. And Dan O'Dowd was like, "Yep, that didn't work out very well." And and see, like that's why the Rocky. Listen, it would be awesome to see a starting pitcher like Max Big Max or Verlander or Aaron Nola, Blake Snell, all these guys. And it's easy to be upset as a Rockies fan. It's like, oh, the Rockies aren't trying. They're not trying to get these solid arms who are like signing. Here's the thing: the Rockies have tried that before many times,
Hmm.
failed. Like because it's a tough place to pitch. Coors Field is not like Miami, Philadelphia, Houston, New York. You have to get solid pitchers, and some pitchers just they don't perform well. And Bud Black, he mentioned the Rockies, they need good pitchers that are not afraid of Coors Field. And a lot of these strong pitchers that are big market pitchers, they're kind of scared to go to Coors Field. They don't want to go to Coors Field, like, because you're talking about if you have one bad year, that might hurt your Hall of Fame, chance of getting the Hall of Fame, right? Like if you have one or two bad years at Coors Field, probably not the Hall of Fame. That's why they go to these bigger market teams, and that's
Mhm.
that's a disadvantage for the Rockies. But that's why the Rockies are doing homegrown pitching, which has proven to be very successful for them. Look at Kyle Freeland, almost won the Cy Young in 2018. And look at the Rockies' postseason years. You look at 2007, most of the starting rotation guys, homegrown pitching.
Mhm.
2017, homegrown pitching. 2018, or I forgot 2009. 2009, homegrown pitching. You had Ubaldo. You still had Aaron Cook. Jason Hamill was there. I mean, the list goes on. Most of those guys, if not almost all those guys, were homegrown pitchers. They didn't get, you know, Barry Zito, which would have been kind of cool to see his curveball at Coors Field, but it would still probably get rocked. But like, it's homegrown pitching. That's the recipe. And the Rockies, they know what they're doing. And yeah, it would be cool to see those guys. But like Bill Schmidt was honest, he's like, those guys that we tried that before and it hasn't worked out. And number two, they wouldn't want to come to Coors Field because first off, if we tried to bring them to Coors Field, and I like that they were being honest like about this too. They would be the Rockies would be overpaying for them to
Mhm.
pitch for them because you basically if you want to get a big guy, rotation guy, you basically have to overpay for him. And the Rockies have tried that, and we'll see what happens with Chris Bryant. But right now, contract's not looking too good, and the Rockies in some ways kind of overpaid for Bryant a little bit, and so you have to be careful even with extensions, I guess we can kind of talk about this in a second, but like, for instance, the Brewers, they just extended, I keep forgetting his name, but their number one
Uh,
prospect. Yeah, like Jackson Churios or whatever. I think that's his name.
Cheerios, yeah.
Yeah, Churios. And I have my opinion about it. I'm not a huge fan of it because we haven't seen any at bats from him in the big leagues, and he's barely been in AAA. And so it's just like you have to assess that player. You have to assess that pitcher before you do anything. And so the Rockies, they're going to do their research. They're going to look at some guys, and some of them have worked out, some of them haven't. And so that's where you learn. And the Rockies, I feel like they're kind of in that process. It's like, hey, this is what we want. And I'm glad that the Rocky in the draft, they're looking at very solid guys who might be able to come up through here, like we were talking about early in the season, right after we had the draft. Chase Dollander, we feel like he might have a chance
Mhm.
to come up here very quickly. Some people think he might even come up here like at the end of 2025 or somewhere
Mhm.
in 2025, which is pretty quick because he still has yet to pitch in minor league game. Because I think the Rockies are kind of working on his development and some of his pitches because his slider, for instance, was kind of a tick off, and I think the Rockies want to fix that. So that's why the Rockies are not going out there and getting the big arms because first of all, like I said, the guy might not want to come to Colorado. Number two, the success level is probably not going to do too well because the Rockies they've done that before, hasn't worked out.
Just look at the Mike Hampton contract.
Hmm.
That's
Yep.
all you gotta do. And I
Yeah.
mean,
Just like Google it, Wikipedia, look it up. The,
anybody listening, watching, just type in Mike Hampton, look up the extension, look up the
yeah.
years, the number, look at the years, the dollars, and just look what the result was. And yeah, the truth is, and I've been to Colorado. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this. I go to a place called Telluride down in the southwest corner of the state.
Beautiful, beautiful place.
It is beautiful. But the one thing I will say to anybody who doesn't truly, just to kind of, I guess we can elaborate a little bit. When you when you go to the Mile High City, you have that thin Colorado air. So when you see a baseball fly off the bat at let's say 110 miles an hour at Coors Field, it is going to go further than it would in let's say Guaranteed Rate Field here in Chicago or Wrigley Field on the north side. It's due to that thin Colorado air. And then the same thing goes with pitching. When you throw, I'm gonna use curveball as an example. When I throw a curveball, even when I turn my wrist at the right time to get the right top spin on it, to get the drop on it, there's not, because of that air, it is not, there's a really good chance, a higher probability that it won't break as much as it would as if I were to throw it here in Chicago, either of the two
Hmm.
ballparks. That's
Right.
just a challenge. Now, as you point out, all of the recent playoff teams in Rockies history, they all had pretty much, I would say, 85 to 90% of their pitchers, both start rotation and bullpen, were homegrown players. And that's the thing. When you go up through the Rocky system, you play, for example, Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's above sea level, not high as Denver, but it's still above sea level. So it gives you, I guess you could say, a taste of what it's like pitching at altitude, or also what it's like training altitude. Due to the thin air, the you have less oxygen going to your muscles and circulating through your body. So it is tough, and not to mention the travel back and forth can be taxing on your body. So that's why, I know. Do I want to sign somebody like a Garrett Cole or a Jacob DeGrom who signed last year with the Rangers, or even no, I'm gonna throw Max Scherzer. He's past his prime. I'm gonna leave him out of this. I'm not giving that guy $43 million at his age. But the point is, would I want to sign those two guys who I think, when healthy, DeGrom and Cole are the two best pitchers in the game? Of course. But, it's a reputation that the Rockies have. And it has, in when we put together the right pitching staff, we can achieve success. And
Hmm.
I think we have a couple of players who can help us get there. For me, I'm still in on Freeland. I'm still have faith in Gomber. I believe Marquez can still be effective when he returns. Is he going to be a Cy Young contender? Who knows at this point? Will Kyle Freeland get back to 2018? Kyle Freeland, who really knows?
Yeah.
But the point is, that is a strategy that the Rockies have. It's just something it's a hurdle that's very difficult to overcome. And when they overcame the hurdle, again, go not just Mike Hampton, go to guys like Wade Davis, Brian Shaw, uh, who's the
Jake
other
McGee.
one? Jay McGee, thank you.
Yeah.
That was that offseason. They signed nine. Really, and again, Wade Davis, 2018, he did set the franchise record for most saves in the season. But after
Mhm.
that, the everything started to get to him. But the point is, that's just how our strategy works. We can sign elite bats and elite position players, but pitching, that has to be from within. Because, and again, like as you pointed out, it has shown there is a track record of success when it comes to developing pitching within our system.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And um, yeah, and if the Rockies, we've like talked about this before, like if the Rockies want to get back to the playoffs, or any team really, for that matter, if you want to get back to the playoffs, it starts with pitching. That's what the Rockies are doing. Plain and simple. We can talk, all day, all night about this, but plain and simple, Rockies need pitching. That's what they're doing. So I'm on board with it. As long as we're getting pitching, thumbs up, Rockies. So the Rockies, they like almost right after I think the Rule 5 draft, they actually made a minor league signing. They're bringing back Matt Cook, right-handed pitcher, who I liked this past year. Yeah, he had some rough outings, but I like that.
Mhm.
I like that signing. It's a minor league deal, so you're not paying him on a major league contract. So the Rockies, they can give him options if they want to bring him up if there's an injury, or if somebody gets cut or DFA'd, so they can bring him back up. So I like that. So that kind of starts, even though the Rockies have like claimed a couple players, like Jeff Hartlib from the Mets, who pitched for the
Mhm.
Mets this past year, and then Jalen Beeks who also was from the Rays. I like that. I like that selection there. Who we got him back in November, I believe. So I like so far the Rockies pitching. That's really like what we've been talking about pitching. And but again, we're going to keep our eyes out. I feel like the stove is about to get hot. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockies kind of jump on the train and just kind of make some of these little minor moves here and there, kind of like pick this guy, pick that guy, if
Mhm.
they want to get backup catcher, or just like a bench player, for them to solidify the bench a little bit more. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we could see a trade here very soon. I think Montero could be a possibility.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking of winter meetings, so the winter meetings just ended yesterday. Like this was okay. So going into this winter meetings, we had a lot of people like, oh, this could be the week that Otani goes to wherever, or this could be the week that Soto gets traded. And yeah, Soto got traded, but it's just like we didn't like day one, barely got any moves. Only basically like these like basically these small deals. That was it, like these 1 year deals. And it was like, okay, maybe day two it will be a little bit better. It was a little bit better, and but other than that, it just not nothing much. And then day three yesterday, yeah, there was some activity, but obviously the big one was Juan Soto last night, being official, and then well, I should say this morning it was really really official.
Right.
Um, but the winter meetings, it's kind of like, and some people are pointing the finger at, Otani. And yeah, I wanted to have a fun winter meetings, and it would have been great. But at the same time, though, you got to give Otani his time to sign, because this is a big deal. I mean, this is this is probably where he might be playing for the rest of his career, potentially. And so you got to be serious about this. And if I was Otani, I mean, I'm not him, but like for any player, this is a decision, especially if this is going to be like a multi-year, like multiple, like 8, 9, 10-year deal. A lot of people are saying it's going to be in that range. Plus, some people are saying that this could get close to 700, 800, million. Or some like there's big metrics. I don't have the big brain enough to compute that, but it's so like you got to give the dude time. Like, come on, like, and and not to mention, I think they're saying that like Luck says, you want Soto and Judge,
Oh god, that's
yeah.
good. Oh my god, those two together back to back.
Oh,
Oh god. Oh my
like
god.
that lineup is gonna be like. I don't like the Yankees, but I'll give them credit. I think they're gonna make the playoffs this year, probably with the Juan Soto. I mean, with the way
Yeah.
that guy is. Let's put that lineup. Hold on, let me bring that up. But yeah, it's just with that lineup, man, it's just incredible. And not to mention that outfield. They and plus they got Verdugo, who let's just jump into it. Like one of the signings that
Mhm,
they made, one of the signings at the Winter Rings the other day. Uh, the Yankees traded for Alex Verdugo, who
mhm,
a lot of Yankees fans weren't too happy about that because some people remember what happened just recently when the Red Sox went to Yankee Stadium. And he kind of jumped up and started barking at some of the fans in left field
mhm.
and
Yeah.
kind of started saying some stuff which we won't say on the podcast. But
Yeah.
basically, it's just like some fans were, but they're getting a pretty solid outfielder. But some people were like, "What about Soto? Like Yankees, Cashman, are you okay? Like what's going on here?" Like, but Yankees fans, they got two solid outfielders. With Soto and now Verdugo, and I mean, plus they got Volpe at shortstop, and they're not done yet. They might. There's rumors that they're going to get Yamamoto. We'll see what happens there. I want to say I predicted Yamamoto to the Yankees. We'll see. Um, so yeah, I mean that's a for Soto and Verdugo to go to the Yankees. That a lot of people are saying that you know Yankees are back. We'll see. I mean that division is still going to be pretty darn competitive with their Blue Jays. Who knows? Maybe the Blue Jays get Otani, the Red Sox. Like I could see the Yankees being a wild card team, but I just got to see more. Like Soto, great, but still, like I got to see more because the offense was wishy-washy this past year for the
Mhm.
Yankees. It's just like you got to avoid injuries. And Judge, I hate to say, like Judge is a very good player, but imagine if he didn't get injured this year, the offense would have been a lot better. So I think the Yankees could make the playoffs for sure, but you got to stay healthy. That's the number one thing. So I like this trade for Soto, obviously, because he's arguably the best hitter in our game right now, next to Otani for sure.
Yeah, the Yankees definitely gave up quite a few pitchers in those two deals alone. They gave up 3 pitchers to get Verdugo, and in the trade for Soto, they gave up, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4 additional pitchers to get Soto. And I'll get to the other end of the point. But the thing is, when you look at those trades, you put, oh my God, the thing is, because Soto can't play center field. Verdugo is, yeah, he's iffy when it comes to center field. I mean, he's better suited for corner outfield. Judge, I mean, he's, oh my God, such a big man he is. He is so athletic. He has played center field. And to
Yeah.
talk about that, I mean, if opening day was tomorrow, he would be in center field, unfortunately, because of those 3 names. He's the best one. He's best suited to play the position, which is kind of odd. But
Hmm.
the one thing is, people got to remember, don't sleep on Trent Grisham, who came along with him. He is not a very good hitter, granted, but he is an outstanding defensive outfielder. So that's obviously it was good that Brian Cashman was smart enough to think, okay, I'm acquiring Soto, but I need to add some defense here. So he's a good addition to your bench. I know that Aaron Boone has probably got some creative ideas on how he can work a rotation with those 4, because with Aaron Judge, you got to be very careful, because that's an expensive player you got right there playing a position. I'm not saying he's not suited for it, but just his big body in center field, regardless of what ballpark you're playing, whether it's Coors Field or Yankee Stadium or any other ballpark in baseball, it's going to be a challenge on that big body. And granted, he is a great athlete, but again, you want to limit the width. Just like, again, we go back to Bryce Harper now becoming the full-time first baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies, and Chris Bryant for the Rockies becoming the Rockies full-time first baseman. When you have an asset that you're paying so much money to, you got to protect it, and especially when he is the heart and soul of your team, or in this case, your offense. Because again, Stanton's showing signs of decline. LeMahieu is still a formidable hitter, but he's showing signs of decline. Gleyber Torres, I don't know if he's going to return fully to 2019 Gleyber Torres. And
Hmm.
again, It's just that you got to protect your best asset. And I mean, I would be even uneasy playing him 50 games in center field. To me, that's still way too much. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
but I'm sure they're going to have a way to work him around as being a DH. I know Judge probably doesn't want to do that, but again, it's what's in the franchise's best interest and what's also what they think is in his best interest. So yeah, but just the fact, oh my God, Soto batting second and Judge batting right after that. Imagine being a pitcher and you get whether it's the first inning or if it's the ninth inning. Imagine having to face those guys because you pitch around. Because again, remember Soto has a fantastic eye at the plate. He had what was it on base percentage? I think last year over 450. I believe what
Yeah.
his final
Something
was.
like that. Yeah.
That guy is just I mean, I love the Soto shuffle. I love
Yeah.
that thing.
Yeah,
That's
like,
cool. But
when he was with the Padres, it was just like I hate the Padres, but it was just like you gotta respect the player. I like Soto now since especially since he's out of the NL West. I like Soto. He's just a fun player. I love the
mhm,
smile. But yeah, like I mean, Soto. I mean, and then I saw something today. Like his first multi-career home run game was in Yankee Stadium,
mhm,
and it's just like, ooh, that's interesting. And so he's gonna hit home. I think I wouldn't be shocked if he. I guess this is a take from me for next year. I think he finishes in top three MVP next year. I wouldn't be surprised
yeah,
at all. I
yeah,
think he's going to be a solid player over there
yeah, with that
if he's
short portion.
healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the short portion right there. Not to mention one final point I'll make on Soto. This is a golden opportunity with him going into free agency. Think of it this way. Arguably, I would say he's top. I personally think top five, even I have to do a ranking here, top three hitters in the game based on pure hitting only,
Yeah.
putting speed, defense, and everything out of it for a second because he's an okay fielder at best. I
Yeah.
think he's one of the best hitters in the game when you take
For sure.
power, contact, discipline, everything into consideration. But think of it this way. He's playing in arguably the toughest sports town in America, maybe one of the toughest in the world. He's playing for the most recognizable franchise in baseball. And remember,
Hmm.
Yankee fans are brutal. They booed Stanton when he struck out 5 times in one game early in April in his first year with the Yankees. And if Soto can, like as you point out, finish, let's say, top three in MVP voting this season, he is going to sign a monster deal. Scott
Hmm.
Boras is his agent. He is going to sign a monster deal. And whether it's with the Yankees or somebody else, because remember, he turned down what was it, around $450 million extension from the Nationals.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot. But the point is, yeah, this is a golden opportunity for him and for the Yankees. Again, if he and Judge can stay healthy, I mean, look out baseball.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Again, it's gonna be exciting to watch. I mean, with the short
Mhm,
porch and right field, even left field. I mean, like it's like almost like a foul ball. It's like a home run. I'm like, what the heck? Like the guy is gonna be insane. Again, I mean, I don't like the Yankees, but I want to give them good luck. I mean, they did their job. I would have been kind of upset they didn't trade for Soto, because it's just they need Soto in that lineup. They really do. And for them to this like Joel Sherman. I don't like him as a writer, but he was right about one thing, and that how the Yankees this past year was their worst year in 30 years, and they needed a guy like Juan Soto who is a generational type player who can turn your franchise around in a big way, especially if you need offense. The Yankees needed a left field bat. They got two of them now. So far, this is definitely a win for the Yankees this offseason. And with Soto in your lineup, then now you arguably, I mean, they still have work to do, but if they can put some more pieces together with that team, uh, they might make a run in the division. But still, I
mhm,
still think the Blue Jays, and even the Rays, man, the Rays, there's a bunch of. However, I do think if they get rid of Glass now, I think the Rays might kind of be somewhat of a team that might be going down. But
mhm,
we all know the Rays, they surprise us each and every year. They might be like, I mean, they won all those games at the beginning of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if they just keep on winning because that's what the Rays do with that farm system that they have. But the Yankees, if I'm a Yankees fan, keep going. But I'm happy you got Juan Soto because they got one of the best players in baseball, if not the best player in baseball. But I think that goes to Otani, which, of course, still no word on where he's going. But there's rumors that he's going to the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, which we're not going to go into it. But basically,
mhm.
Dave Roberts might have hurt their chances a little bit at the winter meetings when he's like, yeah, we're talking to him. And actually, if you look at the video, he paused. He was like, "Yeah, we're talking to him," and I'm like, "Oh,"
Not to
and
mention there
so
was that. Not to mention there was that moment where he looks at his phone. He most likely had
yeah,
that text from Andrew Freeman. And then he went over and he got. I don't want to say scolded, but he kind of got a stern talking to from his
yeah, and
boss.
like the Dodgers GM, it's just like, oh, like dude, like you don't say that. But he might. I mean, he was in LA. I think the other night there was a picture of him at
Mhm,
the
yeah.
Lakers game or something like that. But and it's just tonight there was news that he went to Oracle Park where where the Giants play, talked to some of the front office people there. So it's basically down to Giants, Dodgers, Blue Jays,
Mhm,
Cubs. Um, what's the other one? Angels. But I don't think the Angels
yeah.
are. I mean, it would be funny because me and my brother, we were kind of talking today. It would be hilarious if he just went back to the Angels and just shocked the baseball world and just like, I mean, it could happen. I mean, the Angels are being
True.
active, and that's what I'm happy about. The Angels are being active this offseason, so you never
Yeah, I
know.
mean, you never say never. You really
Yeah,
got to be honest, because from what I hear, he's a very habitual oriented person. He has his routine, whether it's a start day or a non-start day. Um, Real quick story. If anybody doesn't listen to the Nothing Personal podcast with former Marlins team president David Sampson, give it a quick listen. He talked about how when they signed Ichiro had his routine. He had some special equipment he would use to warm up and get ready for games. So the Marlins accommodated part of their weight room for a very small corner of their weight room for that. So I can imagine Shohei Ohtani, from what again I know him, he's a very routine oriented person. I mean, all baseball players are. There's a lot of baseball players who are superstitious.
yeah,
So again, it's not just going to come down to the most money. It's where he feels he gets the best chance to win and who is going to be accommodating to him in terms of how he goes about his business. Because last point I'll make is if you look at him, he's a very private person. He doesn't
yeah,
like being out in public. He doesn't like doing this. He doesn't avoid crowds. And again, I'm not gonna criticize somebody for changing. Be who you are. Don't change
yeah,
who you are just because of public pressure. People say or outside voices say you should do this. Like Stephen A. Smith saying, "Oh, he should be the face of baseball because he doesn't speak." Please stop, stop. Just let the guy be who
yeah.
he is. I mean, and just enjoy the fact that as a fan, you're alive to see arguably one of the greatest baseball players to ever exist. That's
Right,
what I see it as. Just enjoy this. But again,
100%. Yeah.
it is going to be interesting to see where he goes. Very interesting.
hmm For sure. Yeah, I like Lux's comment here. For those who are watching live, you can see the comment here. Lux says, "I think there's a chance Soto might not do good at first from all the pressure, honestly, but
Sure.
still want Soto." Yeah, I agree with that. Like,
Mhm,
we could see. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen, but we could see Soto kind of struggle a bit because I do think that there was a time this past year, where Soto was kind of like in that rut where he just
mhm,
didn't not get on base at all. Like if you look at the on base percentage numbers for the Padres' entire team, it was one of the worst in baseball. It was terrible, especially at
mhm,
first half. It was awful. Um, that's my big concern with Soto is if you can get on base like walks. Like Soto is pretty good at getting on base with walks, but he's got like the big part of Soto's contract is going to be getting on base and hitting home runs, power, that sort of thing, and just being Juan Soto, like
mhm,
Luck said. But yeah, that there's a concern there. Like any player, you're going to a new city, new team. But I think Soto, apparently there's been rumors like his parents have said he's been wanting to be a Yankee for a long time. He loved Derek Jeter growing up and other players, and so
mhm,
this is going to be good for him. But again, like I won't be surprised if he like I agree with Lux. I won't be surprised if he kind of has a cold start. But
mhm,
again, it's Juan Soto. You never know. He's arguably again when he's hot, he's the best player in baseball, easily by far, next to Shohei Ohtani. So, got
mhm,
to run through this podcast quickly for you guys. We're coming up here on the deadline here. Um, Craig Kimbrell going to the Orioles 1 year deal.
mhm,
Great signing for them. I thought
mhm.
because like Tom, like for those who are listening, we kind of like as you know, we a few weeks ago we did our predictions. I think I had Kimbrell going to the
We didn't
Cardinals.
do we didn't do Kimbrel.
Oh, we didn't do okay. I was thinking. Oh, I'm thinking Sonny Gray.
Mhm,
So yeah, Craig Kimball. He went to the Orioles, 1 year deal. Good signing for them. It's a 1 year deal again. So they like with Felix Bautista out for basically the rest of the year. They need a guy like him to solidify the back end of the bullpen, especially at the eighth, ninth inning spot. So great spot for them. I like that signing because I know there was rumors that Kimbrel might be going to the Cardinals. I heard, and then there might be rumors he
mhm.
might be going back to the Phillies. But I like this little signing here for the Orioles.
Yeah, with the season he had, I mean, he had a rough tenure in his first year at the Cubs, and when he was traded to the White Sox again, tough time for him. But he's where did he go after that? Oh, he went to the Dodgers. Yeah, and people thought
Mhm.
his career was over because he was blowing saves, he was
Yeah.
doing this. But he's had a good. I mean, he was an all-star with the Phillies, and for the Orioles, it's a good veteran, reliable veteran arm at the back end of the bullpen that can still close. He's not Braves, Padres, or Red Sox Kimbrel anymore. He's not that pitcher anymore, but he's still effective. And
Mhm.
again, the Orioles still have effective back into the bullpen. And just as an update for everybody, I am of our top 10 predictors, I am 1 for 3.
Same. Yeah.
I only got Nola right, but I knew that was going to happen. But Sonny
Mhm.
Gray, it's a little bit of little bit of a shocker, but we'll see how he goes with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Again, I thought it wouldn't have surprised me if Craig Kimbrell went to the Cardinals too.
Mhm. Yeah, because I got mixed with a couple of line offs. I got mixed with Craig Kimbrell and the other guy, but yeah, great signing for them. Orioles, like I said, good signing. I think it's going to be huge for them, especially if they want to make a huge playoff push, especially from this last year, if they want to go to the ALCS or World Series. Um, Next signing, Eduardo Rodriguez last night went to the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's kind of a shocker team for me. I know the D-backs needed pitching, but I didn't have Rodriguez. Now this is the one we did predict, I believe. I
Mhm,
had
yeah.
Rodriguez going to the Red Sox, and I think you had him going to the White Sox, I
Yes, I
think.
did. Yes, I did.
And so, yeah, so we're 1 for 3 in that. Good signing for their Diamondbacks. I mean, they got a lefty pitcher. A lot of their guys in the rotation are righties with Gallen and Kelly and Brandon Fott. So this is a good signing for them. 4 years, solid pitcher. Again, one of those guys that just can pitch. And, he had a pretty nice year in Detroit. Obviously, the Dodgers were interested in him at the deadline. Didn't happen.
Mhm.
Kind of rejected that trade there.
Yep.
Um, Good trade for the D backs. I mean, they got their guy.
I definitely think with the fact you got Zach Gallen as your ace and Merrill Kelly as your number two, Eduardo Rodriguez will fit in just nicely as a number 3. And this is a signing really that we need to I want to keep an eye on, especially not just because the Diamondbacks are looking to get back to where they were, get back to the World Series, but also I do think they're going to really make a serious run against the Dodgers and get the division crown. Again, we have to wait and see how things rosters are like in spring training. But this is big, especially given that Brent Strom, the Diamondbacks pitching coach, is one of the most respected pitching coaches in the game. He just has it would listen to the World Series and things that he does, whether it's training methods or meeting stuff. He has a knack for getting the best out of his pitchers. So again, to
Yeah.
see that three-headed monster, I'm intrigued to see how this goes.
Yeah, 100%. And, you're going up against the Dodgers rotation in that National West, who they're still suffering with injuries. So, on the pitching side, you could easily give it to the D-backs, especially with the way they pitched this past year was incredible.
Mhm,
Um, what's the other signing? Once, of course, we already did the one Soto, and then the Braves. This was at the beginning of the winter meetings. They got
mhm,
Jared Kelnick, who was a top prospect. One of the best prospects of just a few years ago. He's been struggling with the Mariners over the last few years, but he's had his moments, especially last year. Remember when the Rockies played against the Mariners in Seattle? He just was on fire, unstoppable. He was hitting home runs almost every single night. Then he kind of just I don't know, just the way he is, he just kind of falls off the table a little bit. But for a guy that's going to be going back to a team that is arguably with the best lineup in baseball with the Braves and the talent that they have, and a guy that's going back to the same division where he was drafted from the Mets, and so he gets to play his old team, and so a lot of people are like, oh man, he's going to kill the Mets, and I'm looking forward to it. I really like Jared Kelnick. That's a good trade for the Braves, but it's a decent trade for the Mariners too. But and I think when you and me were texting early in the week,
mhm,
I wasn't a big fan of if I I'm not a big fan of this for the Mariners just because it's just like I don't know. It's just the way that they've been handling it. However, they got some good returns. The Braves, they usually trade pretty well. They don't really, give you any. I mean, the Braves farm system is overall pretty solid
mhm,
from a lot of reviews. So the Mariners are going to get good, solid players in return, and they did. And so I'm interested to see what happens here. But I really like the Jared Kelnick move here because I just feel like he's finally going to be able to have that chance to be the starting outfielder and I believe left field for them. Um, or whatever position they're going to have him. So I like the move for the Braves. Maybe not so much for the Mariners, but this is one that kind of shocked me a little bit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's looking at the Braves trade acquisitions again. They acquired Aaron Bummer from the White Sox, which for them can work out very well, considering Bummer is more of a ground ball pitcher, or because of his sinker. So he'll do better, I think, with a better defense behind him that the Braves have. But they acquired two more pitchers from the Mariners, and to your point about it being an interesting trade for the Mariners, not just I'll get to Jared Kelly in just a quick second, but Marco Gonzalez, who is characterized as kind of an overpaid pitcher, so they're kind of looking to offload that contract. But the Mariners yesterday just flipped into the Pirates to get somebody back to add to that, to add depth to their system as well. So they flipped him for that. But Jared Kelnick, again, the Mets had very high hopes for that guy. He was expected to be one of their corner outfielders for, they said, 5 to 10 years if he worked out.
Mhm.
So again, change of scenery can definitely help, especially with a team like the Braves, who right now he can, if he is in the lineup, he can just relax knowing he's got such elite hitters around like Acuna, Olson, Albies, etc. But here's one that's interesting. Going back to the Jackson Churios, the other one, Evan White. There, I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but in the 2019, before the 2019 season, he signed a 6-year extension, and he was in high A ball with the Seattle Mariners. So,
Yeah.
and so it's another example of, if you give a guy get all that guarantee, it's again 24. It was 6 years, 24 million. It's not the Churios 80 million, but it just goes to show you it can be tough for, it can be many different reasons. It's a big cautionary thing when you give a guy money before he even takes in at bat in the majors. And I can
Mhm.
give you more examples with the White Sox, but I don't want to bore people to death. But for both sides, it could work out. The Braves are really trying to kind of restructure their pitching staff a little bit, which they seem to be doing a good job of. And for Seattle, I know they're trying to, again, the offseason isn't over, but they're another team that you still got to watch for, because they're getting Robbie Ray back, and we'll see how Kelnick and White specifically work out when it comes to going to the Braves. But yeah, the Mariners did acquire two pitchers, so they're kind of restructuring things too. So again, interesting trade. We'll see how it goes, but it was definitely kind of an interesting start as leading into the weekend before the winter meetings.
Absolutely, yeah, and like for the Brewers, again, they got a very good farm system, but like I said, like you said, it's a very high risk, because you don't know if this guy's going to get injured. You don't know if things just fall apart. He just does not perform well, and you have to call him back down, and that could happen very easily because again, these guys are human. They're prospects. Even the best prospects like Jordan Walker. He was one of the top prospects this past year for the Cardinals. Got sent down, even though I didn't really like that move because Jordan Walker got to get his playing time in, and they sent him down. That kind of hurt him a little bit. So hopefully that doesn't happen with Cheerios with the Brewers, but it just I don't know, like that would be like extending Tovar um, when he was still in AAA or like
Mhm,
just getting out of Double A. It's just like that's not the smartest decision ever, or something like that's not a move that you kind of want to make. Because you're taking a very high risk. Like, yeah, like he might have a very good ceiling, but it like Riley Pine, for instance, very high ceiling coming, getting picked up in the draft. But look what happened. Injuries hurt him. And not only that, but just nerves got him. The command was off. But I mean, hopefully he has some type of bounce back year to where he can get back in the big leagues and be a big part of this Rockies pitching staff. But it happens in baseball, and that's my worst fear for Jackson Churios. It's
mhm,
just that he just all of a sudden he just doesn't hit. He just can't get on base, strikes out a lot. But I mean, his numbers are good, but it's
mhm,
just that you got to be careful here. Like if I'm the Brewers, I'd hold off until we see him one full year, and
mhm,
then we kind of give an assessment. Okay, now let's consider extending him. Kind of like what the Rockies did this year with Nolan Jones. Like I wouldn't be like I put out on Twitter. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockies extend him. I feel like it's coming eventually. Maybe not this offseason, but I feel like it's coming somewhat fairly soon. Um, but you got to give the guy at least 1 year in the big leagues, or at least
mhm.
almost a full year before you kind of make a decision. Hey, we're going to extend this guy. So we'll see. I'm
And what
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, just one quick comment to all of our viewers and listeners out there. Just a reminder, unlike NFL contracts, which are not 100% guaranteed, MLB contracts are 100% guaranteed. So even if Jackson Chirinos doesn't even take an at bat in the majors, all of that money is guaranteed to him.
Yeah, and so they can't get that back, and they're
No.
spending a lot of money for him. And plus, plus they need to get more pitching because they're probably going to lose Corbin Burns this offseason. They're
Possibly.
possibly if they trade him. Then of course Woodruff is off. He's not coming back, most likely, unless if they somehow bring him back as well. But with the Brewers, I feel like we're looking at a potential rebuild here, or at least a reset season for them, with especially with the moves that they made with the extensions of Jackson Chirios and guys like that. And of course, they have a very good, young, solid group of players over there. With Bryce Turang and or Bruce Turang, whatever his name is, but and then Blake Mitchell as well. But it kind of scratched in my head a little bit. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's all like we're not experts or anything. We're not like, oh, this is terrible. No, it's just that, in our opinion, we're kind of not big into that right now. We're just not super excited about that because something that it's a huge risk, a very huge risk, and it's just something that can definitely backfire because we've seen it before. We've seen it before to where guy has a high ceiling and it just doesn't work out. So we'll see.
There's plenty of can't miss prospects who didn't make it to the majors.
Mm-hmm.
Not to
Absolutely.
mention other big storyline, of course, this is going to be the first year of the post Craig Counsell era, so we'll see how that goes too.
Yeah, and like the Cubs, and I guess we'll talk about this like very briefly before we head
Sure,
on out of here
sure.
for the night. But the Cubs, you know, they could be like I wouldn't be surprised if they're on Otani. I think they're definitely like a lot of teams are after Otani, but the Cubs for sure, especially with the moves that they made so far and bringing in Craig Counsell to be their
Mhm,
manager instead of going back to the Brewers. That says something. And I feel like with the Cubs, what they're doing with their franchise in the front office and with some of the players that they have with, say Suzuki, like I mentioned, like a week or two ago, former teammate of Shohei Otani when they were over at Japan. I wouldn't be surprised with them trying to bring in an Otani. Uh, you know, I guess we'll wait and see, but I just feel like the Cubs could be a very sneaky pick, which I
mhm.
still have him going to the Cubs in my predictions. I picked him to go to the Cubs, so I'm hoping he kind of goes to Chicago. But I say every single podcast, any team but the Dodgers, really, to get Otani. But the Cubs, they're up to something huge, and I think with the moves they made, they're making a statement that we want Otani.
Agreed. I mean, they're whether you believe Bob Nightingale or not, I don't because I believe they're still talking to him. Jed Hoyer is somebody who is gonna make an attempt, but I know he has probably a ceiling that he's not going to go over. And at
Mhm.
some point, he can if he doesn't get if they don't get a time, they can pivot and go after Yamamoto to upgrade their rotation. That's always a possibility. There's still plenty of chances out there, but the point is, I think going back to what I'm living in Chicago and hearing what Cup fans are saying, if whether you do or don't get Otani, if you let's say hypothetically they do get Otani, that can't be the only move you have to make. You still have to upgrade additional parts of the roster. If you don't, take that money and upgrade the roster elsewhere. So again, I hope, like you said, I hope even though I picked the Dodgers because I think they're the favorites, I hope he doesn't go there for
Mhm.
the sake of the Rockies. But
Yeah.
well,
Well,
again, we'll have to wait and see. I got a feeling it's the decision's not that far away.
Well, like we ended last week's podcast. If it happens, if Otani somehow comes to Colorado, we're going to do an emergency podcast
Oh,
immediately. Like right here. Feel free to subscribe, hit that like button. Make sure to see what happens with Otani, see where he happens. Reports are saying he's going to sign in the next day or two, like or at least by the end of the week. We'll see. But give Soyo his time. He deserves it. That's going to be the biggest contract potentially in Major League Baseball history, or at least in that team's history. So, um, I think that'll do it for tonight. I think that will conclude this episode of the Rockies Now podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and review all of our social media pages. We love hearing from all of our wonderful listeners. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.